This is Rudy.
This is Flick.
This week, we're going to try to counter what some of the negative energy out there in the world. We're going to talk about the music that makes us happy.
Yeah, this week we've made playlists that started out as something. Well, it started out for me as something I wanted to do to cheer myself up, but hopefully I can help others, and we can both help. We can both help each other, and we can help others in the process.
Yeah, I think we've come up with some good lists. I think we can reach almost everyone with what we've put together here. We will do that next.
All right, this one you may well know, you may not know it, and if you don't know it, I really don't know where you've been.
You forgot? Forgot the magnetism of Robin Zander or the charisma of Rick Nielsen?
That's kid stuff.
It's just come up to 5:35 a.m. Kommen Sie bitte und listen to Kraftwerk.
I don't know, man. I kind of like Van Halen.
Well, yeah, Plum, you do. And you know why you do? Because corporate America is shoving something down your throat and making you believe it because that's what they want you to believe. I mean...
Okay, buddy. I was just trying to cheer us up, so go ahead. Put on some old sad bastard music, see if I care.
That was Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell, a song in which Joni complains that they paved Paradise to put up a parking lot. A measure which actually would have alleviated traffic congestion on the outskirts of Paradise, something which Joni singularly fails to point out, perhaps because it doesn't quite fit in with her blinkered view of the world. Nevertheless, nice song.
How about the tunes? I want you to want me. The dream police. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Your mama's alright. Your daddy's alright.
I get by because the people who make a special effort to shop here. Mostly young men who spend all their time looking for deleted Smith singles and original, not re-released underline, Frank Zappa albums.
Gang. Yes. I mean, look, you can play an E pentatonic scale at 100 miles an hour till somebody's ears burn off. You can learn that, right? But finding the tangents within the framework, therein lies the artistry, man.
God made your ears. You didn't make them. You gonna argue with God's ears? If it sound good and it feel good, then it's musical. So play it like I say play it. From the top.
That was Sweating Lunatic Iggy Pop, part of our Tuesday night punk pack, which is climaxing at midnight with Madness. This is Norfolk Nights with Alan Partridge, and we're in the middle of Super Talk. Super Talk!
Okay, so this week we were going to be drafting Beatles songs, and we will still do that most likely next week. But kind of, the way the week went, this past week has been a week that feels like it started a month ago. So much has happened, and not really any of it good. So kind of this idea for this week's show was something that started out as something I was doing for myself, where I was just putting together a playlist of songs that cheer me up. And I passed the idea on to you, and just thought it would be a good idea to do a show where we put together playlists that with songs that cheer us up, and hopefully we can do the same thing for anybody listening.
Yeah, I use music to get my brain to give up the pleasure chemicals more than anything I can think of in the world. Like, I can't think of anything really that I have used more often to just feel better than music. And so these aren't necessarily ranked for me, but these are for just various reasons. Sometimes these songs for me come and go, and then sometimes I'm constantly listening to them. But the ability in my life for music to make me feel better or feel good, I can't think of too many other things. I mean, there are a few, but not many. I did only while building my playlist that I realized just how much I enjoy doing this topic, and I'm glad we're doing it now because the planet, the world is nihilism inducing right now, and music is going to be one of the most human things I think we have to remind ourselves how human we are. It is a universal language, and I'm getting the cringy and the cliched there, but it's one of the things that we, no matter if we could speak every language in the world, we could do this topic in any language, in the world, and everybody in the world would understand what we were saying and meaning. That's a big deal. So, yes, kicking against the pricks, I think, is at least that's the way Nick Cave put it. I feel like that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And it's okay. So of course we're talking about the coronavirus. I don't imagine that anybody that would hear this does not know that that's, going on. And
yeah, we're recording on the 15th of March in the 5 o'clock Eastern. You are in Des Moines. I am in the New York area. I'm like in between Newark and New York City, a town called Harrison. It's crazy.
This is social distancing taken to the ultimate extreme here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That is true. But well, you know what? That's a glass half empty, half full thing. I'm going to take that up later because nothing was more distant than not having it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good that we can do the show the way that we do it because one, there wouldn't be really any way for it to be possible. Right. But also at times like this, it's nice to know that things going on don't prohibit us from doing the show because we're not in the same room. And it would be nice, at some point we'll be in the same room, but it's
it'll be interesting because we've never done this in the same room. Who knows?
Yeah,
we'll get there.
Yeah, but it's nice that technology is what it is and allows us to do the show this way. Especially like this where it could be, like an issue. But yeah, I mean it's it's interesting that this year started with our songs about the future playlists and not really planning it, but my playlist ended up being this very dystopian thing, very dystopian theme that we're very much living in throughout, as this year has gone on, more and more so day by day. But today we're going to go the opposite direction. We are going to because it's okay to be happy, like times like this. It's okay to be happy. Music is a great way to find that happiness. For me, it's the absolute best way. And that it's the way that I medicate myself. I'm not one that imbibes heavily in drink or drugs or anything like that, and music is really what gets me through the day, and especially difficult times like this, it is one of the most important things in my life, I think.
Yeah, I experience more of my day with music in my ears at this point, at least during waking hours, than I do probably without, and it's been that way for decades. It's omnipresent, and yet, to your point, like it can be curated, like you'd mix things up with a mortar and pestle. You can playlist your way whole. So I'm into it. I think I looked at your playlist because I cheated, but I don't think I think this is all killer, no filler, straight through. So I'm ready.
Okay. So do you want to kick it off or do you want me to?
I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to just try to get one out of the way here because it's so on the nose. I'm embarrassed in a way, but damn it, if you can name a song Good Feeling, and the record literally just delivers good feeling pretty much beginning to end. Like, you just can't ignore it. I'm not a big Flo Rida fan. I'm a much bigger Etta James fan, I'd say. I think that's Etta James singing the "Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling." Her voice is, great. She's always been great, but the way that they took the riff from her and sort of flipped it on its head and made it something totally updated and totally unique. Like, I don't listen to a lot of popular music, but I gotta say, if you don't like "Good Feeling" by Flo Rida, or if you don't understand why everybody else likes it, then you're dead inside. That's and it literally delivers on its promise in a way that very, very few records ever have. You know how many songs there are that talk about feeling good? How many abysmal songs there are about that? Like, to have one about feeling good that can do it, it's pretty amazing. So while I'm not a Flo Rida fan, and that's not my my usual jam, you can't ignore Flo Rida, "Good Feeling." I think, I don't know. I just think if you don't get it, it's just, I can't relate.
Yeah, it's interesting though when you said "Good Feeling." The first song I thought of was Travis, their first album, which was called "Good Feeling." And you know what? That's one that if we have to do another one of these shows, and hopefully there isn't much of a reason to, but we can always find some reason to do a show about songs that we enjoy listening to and make us feel good. Maybe something off of that album anyway will make my my next playlist. But anyway, that's what I thought of. I thought of Travis, actually.
All right. Well, I am going to say we might have to have some rules about Lionel Richie songs, but other than that, I'm open to more lists.
You mean "Dancing on a Ceiling" or
"All Night Long"?
Oh, okay.
Feel good. Like he literally, he sang about feeling good a lot. I think you can let it go.
And "Sunday Morning."
Yeah. Although I will say this, I believe he does the vocals on "Brick House" by the Commodores. Like, that makes up for a lot. Is
that his vocal? Because that doesn't really sound like him.
Yeah, I don't know. He was in the Commodores then. He might. I don't know. Well, if only there was a device.
He certainly was in the Commodores, but "Brick House" doesn't sound like his vocal. Although it could be. He might be that versatile. But if "Brick House" is Lionel Richie's vocal, that is the only vocal of his that I know of that sounds anything like that at all.
All right. I'm looking it up. 1977.
Yeah.
Lionel Richie is a songwriter. No, it's Clyde Orange.
See, these ears.
Normally, it is Lionel Richie, but for whatever they,
it's not really his vocal style. So they probably just went.
Yeah, the drummer sang the lead. The lead.
See, my ears. Nothing I trust more than my ears. All right, so anyway, like yours, mine's not ranked. It's not really about what is the number one, best feeling song to me or whatever. It was more about, like just having a flow to the playlist, because I like to put things together, kind of like you're putting together a story or something like that, or not necessarily like with a narrative through line or anything like that, but I like there to be a certain running order, like I guess a running order that you might see if you go see a band live or something like that is probably the closest thing to the way I like to model my playlist usually. And and with that in mind, my opener on my playlist is, a lot of these are my all-time favorite songs, and this is absolutely one of my all-time favorite songs. Iggy Pop, "Lust for Life." And it's not really, like the title may make that seem sort of on the nose, but it's a song that heavily references a William S. Burroughs book, so it's not really it's not really, like, even though I think it's been used in commercials where they just take the chorus and, talk about lust for life and everybody feels good about whatever and all that. There's a lot more to this song than that. But anyway, and, even though it references a William S. Burroughs book that, honestly, I haven't read and I don't know that much about, what really, there's so many things that make it work for me in such a big way. And just right off the bat, those drums, like, there are a few things that I've heard in my life that to me are as exhilarating as the way those drums sound in the intro. And then, when the rest of the band kicks in with it, it's just so perfect. And, I don't know, some people might think that the intro is too long. To me, it is perfect. Everything about this song is perfect. It's absolutely one of my favorite songs ever. And yeah, and it makes references that, because I haven't read that book, I don't really know. I don't know what the Hypnotizing Chickens is about. I don't know what that's referencing. The lotion and the whatnot, but it's absolutely one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, can't argue with any of that. Can't argue with any of that. I mean, the only drum combination, the only intros really any better than that are from Motown itself. Like for if I was to try to say what would punk and Motown sound like together, it's Lust for Life. The only time I've heard that done better was by the actual house band at Motown to begin with. So it is way, 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 way up there in terms of you just can't fade it. That's it. It's great.
Yeah, and I should say one of my favorite albums too. To me, the album Lust for Life is absolutely a masterpiece.
Yeah, I'll report back on this later, but I have my nephew who's only 21 years old. I am trying to explain punk music to him, and I'm trying to decide if I should lead with Iggy Pop or the Stooges. So I've been listening to a ton of it, and I think I must. I'm going to make this we'll come back to this as a topic a couple times, I think. But anyway, I'm going to pick a song next that is not a timeless classic. It might be. There's a couple here where maybe you had to be there. I'm picking They Might Be Giants' cover of the song New York City, which was originally done by a band called Cub, who I believe were Canadian. And I don't think I would have known the Cub version if I hadn't heard They Might Be Giants do it. I believe Cub is female fronted. And it has a very different energy in some respect, but They Might Be Giants, I think, masterfully picked the song here and was faithful enough to it, but brought their own elements to it. Like, it's really, for me to talk about They Might Be Giants and not talk about an original of theirs takes some doing, because that's really what they're great at, is just writing these incredible songs, and yet their covers are fantastic too. And I am fresh off the turnip truck myself. I was born in Chicago. I grew up in Iowa, and I moved from Cedar Rapids, Iowa to New York City in 1997. And, it was overwhelming. The city was absolutely overwhelming. And if you're in love, or you have a good relationship, and you're out just in the city for the first time when you're coming from something very, very different. Like, there's something about that first experience, couple of years in New York that just nothing in my life compares to. And the They Might Be Giants cover of New York City just reminds me of it. Like, it's not entirely autobiographical for me or anything, but it is in the ways that count. Just that the chorus of the song is "Everyone's your friend in New York City," which is, of course, definitely working a double meaning, in the sense that, like, not everybody's literally your friend, but when you're you're in the city and the city's doing what it can do, and you just get caught up in it. It does feel that way. And I've never had another place in the world. I've never been famous. Imagine if you're famous in LA. LA is like that if you want it. But here, like, you just have a total immersion in the city, and just have the city love you back that way. No, I've never experienced it any other place. So there you go. Nothing really. Every time I get bummed about living in New York City, because it's not really home. I consider Northern California my home at this point. That's really where, if I just wave a wand, that's where I'd be. But whenever I need a reminder of why I love New York so much, it's They Might Be Giants cover of Cubs, New York City.
All right, yeah, Cub from Vancouver.
Yeah, they're good. They're good too.
Yeah. Okay, so my next, speaking of Canada, my next song, and and I want to preface this with, I'm not the publicist for Sloan, nor have I been, co-opted in any way by a publicist for the band Sloan.
Mm-hmm.
But I have, since we did the show earlier this year where I tried to, I think I effectively did.
I would not. I'm not a fan like you are, but I'm a fan. You definitely made me go deeper in the catalog than I ever organically would.
Yeah, no, I did. I just didn't want to make the assumption. But anyway, I've been listening to them a lot since then, and of course, got to go see them live in Kansas City last month, which seems like forever ago. And everything, I've been listening to them a lot, and so they've crept up in conversation a lot, and made it, onto this playlist for me. So anyway, it's very organic. There isn't anything where I just keep on talking about them, but I've been listening to them a lot. And the second song on my playlist is a song from Sloan, "If It Feels Good, Do It," which just rocks, just flat out rocks. And it, of course, like your Flo Rida song, and talks about feeling good. It's another one of those songs that talks about feeling good. Sort of seems a little bit like an Aleister Crowley sort of theme to it. With, sort of do what thou wilt sort of idea. If it feels good, do it. I'm not sure I'm going to quite endorse that sort of thing, especially because, living like Aleister Crowley is certainly a good way to spread contagion. So you do want to temper that. But anyway,
thank you. Noted.
just to be clear. But anyway, the song rocks, and it's the second song on my playlist.
All right, I can't complain at all about your Sloan mentions, because I don't think you're even half of where my Prince mentions are. And it took me a lot of work today to not include Prince and talk about Prince. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to keep it New York for a little bit here, and as they used to say in the old days, I don't want to bring the house down too much, man. But up next for me, go ahead.
So just because, okay, so you don't have Prince on your list.
I don't. Not
okay.
This. I deliberately did not put him on here because I go to him too much.
Okay, so just as a bonus track, because he's not on my list either, but. Yeah. But just to stay on that, because you mentioned it, and it's never a crime to mention Prince. But Let's Go Crazy. Let's Go Crazy is like
that was mine too.
What's that?
That was mine too. Of course.
Yeah. But that's perfect for this type of list.
All right. I have to insist though, the special dance mix. So when you're on Spotify, I will go out of my way and put it on there. The special dance mix is really like the fully recorded version. The version from Purple Rain is a fantastic edit. It's one of the best edits I've ever heard, but take the full one in. I'm going to put the special remix version, the original extended version on the playlist. It's worth the extra time, friends. I'm going to go with the Ramones, I Believe in Miracles, which is, it sounds a little corny maybe, but the lyric of, I believe in miracles because I'm one. Like, I guess if you make it to a certain point in life, I guess you can look back and be like, God, it's a miracle I made it. Think of all the dumb stuff I did. I think everybody has something in their life that when they look back, it's a miracle they survived. So I do think the song can be about anything or anyone. I also, though, do think it's maybe a little more specific. And for me, I always think of like 10 years ago at this time, I was in unbelievable chronic pain. I was using fentanyl, the fentanyl patch. Like nobody then even knew what fentanyl was. Now everybody knows what fentanyl is. Like I was using the 100 patch, which at the time was the biggest one made. Like I was in hell. And I think about that during, like right now, I'm doing my social distancing and I'm staying home. But thank God I got better enough where I'm not dependent on that. And I went through all of what you go through when you stop taking fentanyl. So for me, I feel like I had some experiences that had a little extra on them in terms of stuff that I dealt with. So when I do listen to this song, and I do feel a bit like it is a miracle that I made it. I do think of it as not necessarily as a product of me, like even leading any sort of like born to be wild lifestyle or anything like that. Like I got sick. I took intense medication. I wasn't as sick after surgery, and I stopped taking it. But like the cycle of going through that and getting it to completion is it's a motherfucker. And so I consider I Believe in Miracles to be the last great Ramones song. It came out in like '89, I think, and I wasn't paying attention to them by then. And it was only later that I found this one and realized when I listened to it just how much I enjoy hearing about it. So again, I'm not comparing myself to like a genuine miracle or anything like that, but we all have things in our life that we're lucky went our way. And I mean it in that sense, but I also mean it sort of in the particulars, if that makes sense. So Ramones, I Believe in Miracles.
Like it. The Ramones is actually one of the first bands I thought of when I was putting together my list, and they actually didn't end up making my list because I couldn't really figure out what was like the perfect song for my list. And so it just didn't happen. Like they're on my extended list, but they actually were, like Lust for Life was the first song that I had, and that's, if we're going to talk about playlist making like it's an art form or anything like that, which I'm all for, then Iggy Pop's Lust for Life is definitely one of my tropes. It's one of my big go-tos.
Sure.
And so that was the first song that came to mind because that's easy. And then Ramones was the second thing that came to my mind, but I just didn't really know what song to go with for mine, and so they didn't end up making my list. But it's good that they're represented on one of ours.
Yeah, the Ramones around the world make the pleasure chemicals flow. Everybody in the world would know "Hi Ho, Let's Go" at this point, I think.
Hey ho.
Hey ho. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I guess I don't know. Bite my tongue. Bless your heart.
But anyway, okay, so my third song is Ozzy Osbourne, Flying High Again, which I'm pretty sure is about dropping acid, but definitely a feel good song, and another song that rocks, and it I think makes a really good combination with the Sloan song coming out of that, and I don't have too much more to say about it. It's another song that rocks, and it's on my list. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, Ozzy's a good call. Would you be open to doing a good drug song playlist, even though you're not someone who, by your own description, is not one who gets down all the way in that department?
It could be something I would be interested in doing because I think music kind of. I kind of hinted at this. I don't know how explicitly I said it. Music, I think, just takes the place of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like drugs or alcohol is the thing that people need to get by. Some people need to get by. Maybe need to get by isn't really the right term, but that's what they use to get by. And music is that for me. And like any sort of experiences I've had in my life with that sort of thing just paled in comparison to music. And I think that, yeah, I mean, there are definitely songs that to me are a way of living vicariously through the experiences of others in that regard. And and of course, I can tell you right off the bat what my first what the first song on that list is going to be. So I'll just spoiler alert, give that away right now. Are You Experienced by Hendrix? That's going to be that's
all right. I think there's a playlist in there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to pressure you to view life any differently. I will say Pink Floyd is much more tolerable if you smoke marijuana. That's all I can tell you.
That's why I'm not the biggest Pink Floyd fan. And I always I always felt that way, not even really knowing that Pink Floyd was probably somewhat dependent on that. But like there are definitely Pink Floyd songs I like anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're definitely going to need to take this up as a topic. All right. Next up, I'm going to try to do this quickly. So if I could wave a wand and have any musician come back and resume their career in the modern time, the answer would be Prince, just because Prince is, I think, just important in general. A close second, or at least closer than I think most people's, would be Frank Zappa. I believe the modern world is pretty much what he said it was going to be, and he wasn't an optimist. He was a little too right-wing libertarian for my taste. I think he was viciously anti-union, which just made him seem petty, I think. And I think he treated some of the people in his bands like they were disposable. So I'm not saying everything about Frank Zappa aged well. And I went out of my way to find sort of feel-good Frank Zappa stuff that I could put on a public playlist that's appropriate. Like, I think his music in its time was understood to be satire in a way that we no longer sort of give a pass to. So I think there are aspects of what he did historically, which when surfaced would make him problematic for a significant number of people who aren't, I'm not saying are wrong. However, he got some of the really, really, really big stuff right. And so without having it get into too much non-PC stuff, I'm going to pick Cocaine Decisions and Flakes. They're tied. I found Frank Zappa when I was a kid the way that I think a lot of kids did, which is he had songs about Don't Eat the Yellow Snow and Valley Girl and Broken Hearts Are for Assholes, and I loved all of that stuff. Like it was like Dr. Demento stuff, but dirty and weird and just amazing. And that stuff sort of like, that was what I went to feel good when I was like 15 or whatever. I can't change it, like I laughed my ass off at the song, The Illinois Enema Bandit. I still chuckle at it, even though it's, I understand like it's not aging particularly well. The thing that really surprised me is that over time I was able to sort of let that stuff go, let the sort of the potty humor go. I read a lot about Frank Zappa, just for whatever reason, like my late 20s, early 30s, I just went on this reading terror about Frank Zappa, and I came to understand the vulgar stuff was he would put it on there so he could make enough money to afford to record the stuff that he really felt best about. And that's a lot of instrumental stuff. And I didn't include an instrumental one because I think you got to find your way into it yourself. So I also threw in Willie the Pimp, which he did with Captain Beefheart. I know we're talked about doing a show about riffs someday. The riff of Willie the Pimp is one of the all-time greats, in my opinion. And it's got a very long instrumental package, or part of it, that is it's sort of, I think, representative of what makes his instrumental stuff great. So I put sort of a Frank Zappa threesome together. Cocaine Decisions it laments the fact that almost everybody in power making decisions for everybody else was on cocaine, and we all have to live with the bullshit they come up with. And then Flakes I included because it has the best satire of Bob Dylan I have ever heard. He makes fun of Bob Dylan mercilessly, but I think fairly. So I had to include that because I've enjoyed listening to this shit literally since I was like 15 years old. and some of it hasn't aged very well, and I feel like I put that stuff behind me, but some of it is just so prescient that I'm putting it on my list. There you go. A little more Frank Zappa than we know. I'll try not to bring him up too often. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, not somebody I love, but you know, I respect the choices. All right, so my next one is you know, very much, or a bit more on the nose. You know, I'm giving myself a pass for it with this. It's all about feeling good, and this song. So my next song, my fourth song, is Ice Cube's "It Was a Good Day," where he's, you know, talking about the absolute perfect day rolling through Compton, scoring the triple double. Somehow, no smog in L.A., which I think I think can't possibly be true. But anyway, that's how good the day is, and it's just it's a great song. And the only thing that I would say would be different in my perfect day is the breakfast with no hog. I like I prefer to have my breakfast with hog. Other than that, I totally relate to. Well, I shouldn't say totally relate. Ice Cube's experience is very much not my experience, and I'm not going to try to say that. But it is a great song that I love and makes me feel good.
So, are you aware that they've calculated what day it had to be that he was describing where all of the conditions were met? A smogless day after the Lakers beat the Supersonics?
No.
It's January 20, 1992, which has since then been named National Good Day Day.
So in 1992, that was, I think that would have been after he was no longer in NWA. So let me see, when did he leave NWA? So he was already having a really great day after that.
All I can tell you is I will post it in the playlist. I will put it in the description. I'll put the receipts. This is the best guess, is that all of the conditions. There's only one day where enough of his conditions were met for it to possibly have been the actual day. It was January 20th of '92.
Well, he scored a triple-double on that day, apparently. Okay, so actually, Ice Cube had already left NWA in December of 1989, so there was quite a few. I was thinking he was probably still bummed over leaving NWA, but that's quite a lot of time in between.
Yeah, I put in the Lust for Life playlist on our Spotify page, which is Left of the Dial Pod. I have put in the description the URL to the Atlantic article from January 2012, which documents which day had to be the good day. Good times.
Didn't have to use his AK.
No, I can't argue with this choice. I don't think anybody can. All right, my choice. Anybody could argue with, and they might well win. I just decided to pick like the most just confectionery thing I could think of. I didn't belabor it, and I don't want to talk about the 90s yet, but one of the few things that I think back on the 90s that were great is they had a lot of like one-hit wonders who just made these sort of disposable little confections of songs, you know. What is it? Disneyland by Dada would be one. Like there was just, or maybe that was 89. I don't remember. Anyway, that era is the era of the alternative novelty record. And one of them just, I am unashamed. I enjoy it. It's Steal My Sunshine by Len. And I love the song it samples. Of course, I don't like the stuff about butter tarts and what Sharon got up to last night. However, those things have to be there for it to be the disposable joy it is. Like you sample like an Eternal song, More is fantastic, all-time great. And so you take one of the most like memorable hooky parts of that song, and then you just totally make it sound like just rooted in the 90s, like just rooted in like the most. It's just it's absolutely of its time. I don't know. It's just this. It's umami is the way I would describe it. It's two weird feelings at the same time that you have to feel them at the same time to get that sort of meta umami-ness to it. It had to be the mix of the eternal and the disposable. It's perfect at it. So Steal My Sunshine by Len. I hope others understand. I hope you can understand.
I sort of get it. I certainly get it on the musical level. And yeah, I see your point of view on that. Okay, my number 5 song is "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. Definitely one that feeds the dopamine, I think, to the brain. And it's well exhibited in the movie. Like I think the most memorable scene for most people from the movie Shaun of the Dead is that scene where they're in the Winchester and they're beating off zombies, while "Don't Stop Me Now" plays on the jukebox. And I think that the song is a big part of the reason why that scene is so memorable, because it is like the perfect song choice. And of course, that's an apocalyptic theme to that film as well, and not coincidentally. But yeah, I mean, just a great feel good song. It's really hard to hear that, I think, and stay in a bad mood.
I agree. I think Brian May's guitar work on the song "It's a Kind of Magic" that's an instant like dopamine dump for me. There's just I don't know how to explain it. Like Queen has just this certain sound to them that is just there's nothing really quite like it. And when it's perfect, it's like hitting the tuning fork.
Well, yeah, I think Brian May guitar work in general, I think, is like, very very pleasing to the ear. Had a very melodic way of playing. His solos are great in that way. And the sound of their harmonies, I think the Queen is like a really good, good band to turn to break you out of a bad mood, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to agree with that one. Definitely going to agree with that one. All right. I'm going to go to this is I decide I have a couple ties, and you do this really well, so I'm just going to steal your sunshine a little bit here, which is there's like a little theme, there's just a couple songs that fill a theme for me. And I never was a huge fan of like electronic music. Like I didn't go back and listen. Like I'm not a huge, I don't know, I wasn't like a huge Depeche Mode fan back in their early days and stuff. I loved the Yaz album, but I was never really big on that part of the tree. But by the mid 90s, like I started to find some stuff, and then in the 2000s really found some stuff. And I don't know, 2 songs come to mind. Life is Sweet by the Chemical Brothers, which is a little bit too on the nose. And so I decided I had to, it was tied with the song "A Paw in My Face" by The Field, which is another one that is just so on the nose. Both of these songs make the pleasure chemicals come out via repetition, which is really hard to do, although Over and Over by Hot Chip probably belongs in here too. But like, just there's a unique thing from the sort of like the song "A Paw in My Face" by The Field is like so overwhelmingly blissed out, and yet at the same time it has that almost like digital glitchiness to it, which is really harsh on the ear. And again, it's got the little umami in there, the discordant and the unbelievably sweet in the same little package. And Chemical Brothers' "Life is Sweet" does the same thing. It has that same sort of disjointed rhythm of electronic music at the time. It's not warm in its rhythm at all, but everything else about it is just so overwhelmingly sweet that that the contrast makes it work. So those two, like I've never taken acid. I suppose I probably should. I maybe would enjoy it even more, but I think of these as being both pleasure chemical inducing and somewhat psychedelic, and they're really like the top of the list for me for those sorts of things. So Chemical Brothers' Life is Sweet and Paw on My Face by The Field.
All right. Okay. So my next song. All right. So Don't Stop Me Now by Queen really ramps things up. So it's, but in as to Freddie Mercury's Wishes, I don't want to stop now. I want to keep on ramping up that energy. So coming out of that one and kind of staying with the songs that really rock. And staying poppy. I'm gonna go to like there's a lot of power pop that could have made my list, and it was really hard to figure out which ones to keep. But I felt like a really good sounding one coming out of "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen was "Ecstasy" by the Raspberries, and of course, true to the title, it is ecstasy inducing, I think. And it's song just rocks. It's a song about young love, and not the weightiest topic or anything like that in the world, but just a great song, great harmonies again, staying kind of keeping with that, and just had the right feel coming out of that song.
Yeah, I would say the Raspberries are part of they're in that master class of power pop. They're just top of the heap. It's like I actually feel like those. It's like weaponized. It's a deliberate earworm. You know what I mean? In a way that a lot of other stuff isn't. But I know you love that stuff, so carry on.
Well, yeah. I mean, harmonies to me are a very addictive sound. Just it's that perfect combination of harmonies and Wally Bryson's guitar, and just it's just great. It's great. It rocks.
All right, I'm going to keep it power pop. I'm going in for the big one here. Up next for me is Jesus Christ by Big Star. And now I'm going to play a little lawyer ball here. The first CD I ever had of Big Star was a compilation from Germany. It was called Big Star's Biggest. And the version of Jesus Christ on that also had stuck right onto it the little song that they're now calling Manana or Manana. I can't tell. So I'm going to put those two together. But Big Star's Jesus Christ for me is everything that I like pretty much about Alex Chilton is in there. And we talked a little bit about the show, so you jump in anytime. We should just talk about it. Talk about Big Star. I feel like that album is one of the biggest downers there is. Big Star's third. It's also one of my favorite albums of all time. It's in my all-time top 10, maybe even top 5. I love all of the dark stuff. I love, I even think like O'Dana and Kangaroo of those are like maybe the singles. I don't know. Possibly, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I know there's other singles on there, but
who knows what the singles would have been? But
yeah. Jesus Christ for me is it's the most angelic he ever sounded, Alex Chilton to me. The song I think, uses all of his pop power songwriting prowess. I think it's an achievement from that point of view, but put in the context of the album, it's why the album gets to be great, because it couldn't be all, femme fatale, Holocaust, it can't be all the heaviest stuff. It needed to have a full range, I think, whether it's emotionally or musically or whatever. It needed to, it's why the album is not one-dimensional. And I don't think it would have been one-dimensional even if this had just been left off, but it's complexity of the entire experiencing of listening to Big Star's Third for me comes from the uplift of this song. Like there's enough in there to really level out almost the entire record. And that's not hot take territory there, but for me, the hopefulness of the lyrics side by side with what I think is some sarcasm. But, you know, and the wrong shall fail and the right prevail. For him, that's pretty cheery stuff. Now, in the context of this album, it can't just mean what it says. You know, there's more to it, but this album, which is among my all-time favorites, I really feel like you can't call this like the core of the album, but I think it's what allows this album to reach so many people, is that it really forms an extreme to the other end of the stuff on here that I think is pretty extreme by any standard. So that is my my Big Star love, is for the song Jesus Christ, with the little Barrel House piano intro on it, which I think is called Manana. Put them together, that to me is brain pleasure chemicals, like way up there, way up.
Well, it's I put together a Christmas playlist every year, and it's, you know, one of the few songs, I don't really know what the number is, but it's one of the songs that has never not made my Christmas list year after year, which is, you know, it's an easy call. Another thing about that song that I think I really like the saxophone solo in that.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's, you know, certainly that's unusual for a Big Star song, but I think also it also really makes it like perfect. I think that just makes it so perfect at Christmas time. Just that sound of that saxophone just fits in so well. Yeah, there isn't much on third that is very cheery. Thank You Friends is, you know, to me, I think probably the catchiest song on that.
Yeah.
And I you know, Thank You Friends is definitely something that I've always read as being very sarcastic, but if you take it at face value, it's also very positive. I read it sarcastically, though. Who knows? You know.
How about that timpani, though? Come on. Like, Alex Chilton is arranging for timpani. That's not his whole, you know what I mean? Like, that's a moment in time for him. That's every tool in the toolbox coming out, and
well, that's also, yeah, that's also, we talked, we mentioned Jim Dickinson last week. You know,
yeah.
a lot of that is his work as well. Jim Dickinson did a great job, because I don't think Alex Chilton was the easiest guy to produce at that time.
No.
And, you know, and they were friends too. So he, you know, while being his friend, also had to keep the reins on him, I think, a lot in those sessions.
Yeah. Well, we need to do an entire Big Star show, because you're really the expert. Like, for me, I know you love all the albums equally. I got to Alex Chilton like everybody else did, through the box tops, but once I could start picking music for myself, I got to Big Star from Third and from This Mortal Coil, which is really, like, I don't know how you feel about the This Mortal Coil covers, but I think Kim Deal's cover of You and Your Sister is every bit the original. You know what I mean? Like, I think it can be mentioned in the same breath. Like, this, just the versatility of what Alex Chilton was capable of and what Big Star were capable of is in this record. It's just I know you think they're all equals, but Big Star's Third just opened up so much stuff for me. Yeah,
well, yeah, I mean, there isn't a single dead spot in the Big Star catalog for me. There isn't. Yeah, it's just all great. It's anyone who isn't familiar with it should be, and they'll be happy that they are once they.
I think that's on you. If you find yourself quarantined, Mr. Flick, I think you need to do a noob's intro and push yourself. Try to keep it like 15 cuts. Push yourself. Okay. You can do it.
Challenge accepted.
I know it's no challenge. You are the only person I would trust with that mission.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
You're up.
Okay, my next choice. Okay, so when Sleater-Kinney disbanded originally, they're back together now, of course. It was very disappointing. But when the releases came out post Sleater-Kinney, it was actually very satisfying, at that time to see what they were doing without each other. And there was a lot of good stuff that was going on, even not together. And anyway, the next song on my list is from the Corin Tucker band, No Bad News Tonight. Obviously, that fits in with the theme. And the album title that comes from is Kill My Blues, which also very much fits in with the theme. And I think, she might have been somewhat down from you if you take the song titles and the album titles into account. You might surmise that she was kind of down after the breakup of Sleater-Kinney. But anyway, this song is very much a pick me up, and I'm this is still ramping up the energy to the peak here with No Bad News Tonight. Just a great energy to it. There's a guitar riff that is just catchy AF. It's just if we do a riff show, this will probably be mine. So continuing on that riff theme, very, very much stellar, just a stellar riff.
Can't argue. I don't know if I was into that album. I'm gonna go back and give that one a listen. What did you think of the Cadillaca? Is that the band? Am I remembering that correctly? Didn't Corin Tucker have another band, Cadillaca or something like that?
I don't. That name isn't sounding familiar to me. Are you talking about the one with Peter Buck or something different?
No, I might need some fresh air. I'll dig it up. I'm gonna take your recommendation. I don't really know the song. All right, I've got to go after Big Star. I can't go small, so I have another one of these where again I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Sorry.
Cadillaca. Yeah, you're right. I'm not familiar with it, but actually, it looks like that was maybe a side project during Sleater-Kinney.
All right. Yeah, I was not super blown away by that. I don't know, because I mentioned Frank Zappa earlier. I feel self-conscious because he had his famous quote is writing about music is like dancing about architecture. Like he really disliked music critics and music criticism. And I understand why he says that, but really it is through reading old record reviews from the back in the day. Like now Spotify and streaming is a really easy way to find a band and learn a band's catalog and or learn an entire genre of music. But back then you were kind of given guided tours. And that Folkways anthology of American music, obviously and all the old weird America stuff, that's where Dylan comes from. That's where really blues rock comes from. Just so much of what we currently think of, does all sort of. It does have a history. It does have a tree. We got here through some very key points. And if you love music and like you and I do, you're eventually going to work your way back into the old timey stuff. There was a movie called Ghost World, which was not much of a movie, but it did have a great soundtrack, and it does make this idea that old blues records in particular, they sound like they're communicating from another world. There's something. The movie's called Ghost World. I wouldn't use the word ghost because ghost implies death in a way that I don't get that energy from it. There's something eternally living about these things too. And so there are two that I have gone to many times over, and these maybe not the best songs from that type of music, or they may not be representative of the genre. I am not an expert on the music. I think I bought some R. Crumb anthologies and the Smithsonian stuff, and a lot of the old folk blues and stuff. I am no expert on it, so maybe I'm not even giving it the right category. But Lead Belly's "When I Was a Cowboy" and Blind Willie McTell's Statesboro Blues, to me, are like the most umami things I can think of in terms of carrying two intense emotions together in a way which changes the character of both, the heavy and the light. And there's something, like the way that the guitars are played, especially the old 12-string stuff, it sounds like a calliope, or it's otherworldly. It has like I don't know how to explain it. I don't know enough about music theory to be able to explain what it was they were driving at, but it has almost like that calliope, like that sound that we all, I think, instinctively associate with joy. And yet, from its chord structure and its lyrics and the context in which it was produced, it's far more complex than that. So that concept of feeling good while feeling bad, or feeling okay with feeling bad, or or trying to carry both of those things together. I mean, like the blues, literally, including its name, like that is. I can't talk about like the happiness or music that makes you happy without talking about that feeling of like happy coexisting with sadness, because it's often that little modicum of happiness that is the way you sort of get out of a rut, and it's like your first step in the right direction. And I've always felt like blues music is able to do that in the old folk stuff, particularly the analog organic stuff, does that in a way that just sounds like it's always going to mean something to humanity from here on out. Like it's so much bigger than its time. There's just stuff in it that is, and again, I think Bob Dylan used to talk about a lot of it, and that's really where I started to think about that, which is like in the great flow of ideas that go between cultures and generations. I mean, what is America going to contribute to that? I think jazz for sure, and blues for sure, and after that, I think the jury's out. So to me, those two songs, Statesboro Blues and When I Was a Cowboy, both have that for me. So they feel good, even though they're not about feeling good, if that makes sense.
By the way, have you ever seen the movie Ghost World?
I've seen it. I didn't finish watching it, or I fell asleep during it.
Okay, is that a negative?
I'm much more familiar. Yeah, I didn't think it was great, but I do have the soundtrack, and I've always enjoyed that. Always.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I actually have the soundtrack on vinyl, but I also like the movie a lot. So you might want to revisit.
I'll give it another try for sure.
I know movies aren't really your thing, but
no, but I'll try. I'll try.
It's a good one. All right. Okay, so my playlist really hit the crescendo with the Corin Tucker song, and now I'm bringing it back down a little bit, but of course still staying, with the positive vibes, but being, somewhat ironic with my next pick, because the title of it is Sad Song, Fa Fa Fa, Sad Song by Otis Redding, but thematically it does fit, because what the song is about is how I'll go with the lyrics from it. It's a happy song about sad songs. The verse, sad songs can bring a lot of happy, or it has a sweet melody tonight. Anybody can sing it any old time. What in your heart puts you in a groove? And when you sing the song, it'll make your whole body move. And that's the idea, that, yeah, it's about sad songs, but it's about feeling good from singing those sad songs. And so definitely, to me, a great fit. And it's not a sad song at all. It's a very happy song.
The title has always been hard to get past for me. I'm going to be real honest. The song has to be pretty damn good to get over the title, which is my opinion.
Well, it is though. It I think what.
Would you call a radio station and request that song by name?
Fa Fa Fa, sad song?
Well, there's more Fa Fa Fa's than your Fa Fa Faing.
Well, in the title,
there's
only
5 Fa's. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure in the title there's only 3 of the Fa's.
I would check your playlist, son.
Okay, well let me take a look at my playlist. But anyway, soul music I think is a great thing to turn to for the kind of feeling that we're going for. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, five. You got five of them. Fa 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 fa. Sad song.
The defense rests.
Okay, well, yeah, that's true. You did prove your point. I don't think I don't think you've built a strong case against the song though, just
Oh
against the
no.
title.
To the contrary, I am saying it is the strength of the song that allows the title to be something you just get over.
Yeah, it is. It is a great song. Just the Stax catalog in general, I think, is just a great go-to for the kind of mood that we're going for with this. Just great stuff.
Yep. All right. Well, I still want to go on with this theme of happiness when it is put in the same package as another emotion, and that resulting energy is an expression of happiness, but it can be happiness plus some other element. And in this case, I want to speak in favor of righteous anger. I want to make the case that every once in a while it feels good to get your blood up, and I don't know, headbanging's not the right word, but a kinetic release of some sort. And so I'm going to go with two from Killing Joke that I think represent that sort of that like righteous anger, or it's not even righteous anger. It's like it's happy and ready to you're going through walls, that kind of feeling. And I give Killing Joke a lot of credit because most bands that get together, if they make 3 or 4 albums, they're likely to be crap. But Killing Joke is a band that got back together and put on an incredible run of stuff since in this sort of Mach 2. So I picked 2 from that era that I just particularly love. This tribal anecdote literally starts with Jazz Coleman yelling, "Lift up your spirits," like he's about to invade another planet or something. And then In Excelsis, bad. In Excelsis. How did I ever work in radio if you can't even pronounce the name, boy? It's in the playlist. Lyrically, one of my all-time favorites, maybe a little politically off the deep end at the end there, but just like if you want to have that mixture of the sort of up for whatever, down for whatever, and just feeling all of it. I Killing Joke has always had that place in my catalog. I'm not like that generally without them in my ears, but damn, they're good at it. It's irresistible from that point of view. So it's I'll put a couple in there. They're the reunion stuff, but if you don't know the old Killing Joke, you definitely got to work your way through that too. But we'll start with In Excelsis, and even though I'm still not pronouncing it correctly, in this tribal anecdote.
Do you say it Excelsis? Is that?
No. I am trying not to say the word the way that Jazz Coleman sings it, because he sings, he just yells through it, and it just wouldn't. It would be like it's like imitating a patois when you can't speak it. It just sounds goofy. So I was going to sound bad either way, either trying to replicate his pronunciation or trying to do it the right way. I really didn't have a winning option there.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Okay, so my number 9 song is Neil Young's "Walk On" from On the Beach. On the Beach is a very, very moody album. It was a point in Neil Young's life where he was going through a divorce with his first marriage, and there isn't a whole lot to pick you up on the album On the Beach, but it is an album I love, and Walk On also is not without its baggage. It really is, the first line of the song is, I hear some people have been talking me down, bring up my name and pass it around. They don't mention the happy times. They do their thing, I do mine. It's he's talking about the haters. He has some haters in his life, and he's focusing on that. But the idea of the song is you got to move on. You can't dwell on that. You got to just move forward. That I can't tell them how to feel is the line in the song, and one of my favorite. One of my favorite Neil Young lines, I think, ever is some get why can't I talk? Some get stoned, some get strange. Sooner or later, it all gets real. And it's, I think, very fitting of when you're going through tough times like this, you can't really dwell on it. You just got to move forward. You got to be in the now. It is getting pretty real, and you just got to walk on. And to me, it's On the Beach is definitely, I think, well, On the Beach and Tonight's the Night, I think, are Neil Young's biggest downer albums. But Walk On to me is a song that always makes me feel pretty great.
Yeah, he's a master because he does. There is a little sadness or edge to almost everything he does, and yet you can't describe. I mean, you have to describe most of his catalog as joyous in one way or another, or at least about things that were joyous at one point or another. I mean, he's able to really run the full range. He's great, and I love that album, and I go to it sometimes to feel good and bad at the same time in a way that, like I say, not many can do.
Right. Yeah. I think that album is you just put your finger on the mood of that album. Like, it is a big downer, but it can make you feel pretty good at the same time. Yeah. It's a very complex listening experience, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to know what he's singing about necessarily to know that is some human shit and it's coming straight out of the heart. He's like, those are not, there's no affectation in any of that. So yeah, I'm down, especially for that era. All right, up next, this is a big event for me. I'm so happy I get to talk about this. One of the most frustrating things in the world is when Spotify misclassifies a record or incorrectly labels a version and that sorts of things so that you end up with crappy re-records or whatever it is. Everybody has their own problems. I know there are people who love the re-records, so great. The biggest hole in my heart is that for the Public Image Limited generic album, they did not use the version from the album. They used the crappy remix, the Bob Clearmountain crappy remix from the Greatest Hits album. And the real version of Rise has not been on the streaming services for like 10 years. That song is probably, I don't know if I'd call it my all-time favorite song, but I think I've probably listened to that song more than any other song. Like, hearing that song. So I'm sorry to have to bring up old Frank Zappa again, but I was one of the things I loved about Frank Zappa so much back when I was a kid is because Steve Vai was playing on some of these Zappa records. A lot of the Zappa records with the real dirty stuff that I liked when I was a kid have Steve Vai on as the guitarist. And over time, I came to really, really like Steve Vai. And Steve Vai is the guitarist on the Public Image Limited record that's just called Album. And the two drummers for the album, one is Tony Williams, one of the greatest jazz drummers of all time, and the other was Ginger Baker. So at this time, Public Image Limited was really just Johnny Rotten and then the people that the producer Bill Laswell would bring in. And Bill Laswell wrote the music for Rise, and John Lydon wrote the lyrics for Rise. And again, I think Public Image is great. I don't know if it's, but I think Rise is probably the best thing either of those guys did. Tony Williams, obviously, the beat on his playing on this song, like, I think it's one of the great drum performances in rock music, hands down. It's and I was reading an article about how the song was made, and they basically put him at his drum set at the bottom of an open elevator shaft, and he just played what he played, and they built the other parts were built around it. Like, it's just a masterpiece in so many ways, and it has the thing I was just discussing. The big lyric everyone remembers is "anger is an energy," which in this case is meant to be a positive thing. The song is based on the some old Irish saying of "May the road rise with you." I believe from what I've read, it means that may your path be easy, or the way you go be easy. And so, by Johnny Rotten standards, that's about as positive as you're going to get. And I just this song just to me is I have never tired of it, and I don't think I've ever listened to anything more than this. And so finally, and I don't know how it happened, but somebody snuck the correct version onto one of their compilations. And so for however long, the real version of Rise is on Spotify. Give it a try if you can take it. There's just not many songs I love more than it, and it always makes me feel great. I'm never tired of listening to it, like not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. So Rise by Public Image Limited.
I would say that is definitely as positive as John Lydon has ever been with May the Road Rise to You.
Yeah.
That's pretty out of character. All right. Well, okay. So my next song, just really continuing the, my playlist has levels. It's all pretty up because it's about cheering up. But I'm staying, kind of in certain ranges tempo wise, and just trying to find the right fit going from song to song. The song that just to me sounded perfect coming out of Neil Young's Walk On was a song. Kim Deal had a side project called the Amps in 1995. It was a hiatus from the Breeders. Most of the members of the Amps are also members of the Breeders. I think only Josephine Wigg, who was the bass player, I think she's the only member of the Breeders that was not included in the Amps, and not really sure what the story is on that. But anyway, the song that I have on my playlist is called Pacer, which is very much a beachy, sort of California beach type of song sound to it. Not like a Dick Dale sort of surf guitar sound to it, but very much feels like you're on a California beach. It has that feel to it, and just a very very light, very happy, nice song. Great kind of jangle to it, that just fits and just makes you feel really good. And Kim Deal's voice, I think, is another one of those things that just the sound of Kim Deal's voice, it's hard not to be happy just to hear it,
Yep. She has one of the more joyful voices in rock music, like pure joy. Like there are just times where it just sounds like pure joy to me. I think she's way underrated.
Kim Deal is what angels sound like, I think.
Yeah. Frank Black knew it. I think Where Is My Mind is as much her as him, and I don't think that's too hot a take. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, she's fantastic.
Yeah, can't say. I've been visiting the Breeders a lot lately too. We might. It's because I drove through Dayton. That's what it is. Damn it! I wondered what it is. I drove through Dayton. I don't know why. I'm a weird, sad person. All right. Up next, I want to talk about John Coltrane. I'm actually really embarrassed, and I'm just going to come out and say it is. For some reason, the song Compassion by him from an album called First Meditations, I've always thought of this riff that he plays as being like the heartbeat of God. And again, John Coltrane, I'm not in a position to lecture on, but I really love his music, and I love this era of his music in particular. This is the last sessions, really, with that classic quartet that he had. After that, he made another version of the album. Not to get too nerdy about it, but the album First Meditations was recorded first, but it was released second. The released version was a version of the album that was recorded 2 months later when two other folks were added to the band. So it was not the original quartet. This is the last stuff from the original quartet. It didn't come out until the 70s. And I think this was the end of the line for his band because he was getting too out there for them, or at least that's what they implies with the with what I've read, is that this was sort of the furthest out they were willing to go. And I think in hindsight, I think even they admitted that that was a mistake, that this was much more of akin to what a Love Supreme than it was anything that came after. So to me, it's like the last look at what I would describe as the greatest band in the world, in the history of certainly Western music, to the extent that jazz is Western. And then the version of Meditations that come out have the two greatest drummers, in my opinion, in the history of the world, Rashid Ali and Elvin Jones on it. So like, while I don't love the second one as much as I love this one, I went and I read, where did I get this thing, Heartbeat of God, for the song Compassion? And it's from somebody else's review at Amazon. So like, this is not great rock criticism. I didn't get this from some book. It was just some dude writing in Amazon how much they love this album. And it stuck with me because I really, really love First Meditations. I love Sunship, but then I also love everything from the new band too. I even the full Live in Japan, and Interstellar Space to me is one of the greatest things ever recorded. So I do love the really out there stuff, but his quartet was like the greatest, I think, to ever get together. And this was the limit of what they felt they could do at the time. And because John Coltrane had ideas that went further than that, a different version got released. But to go back and hear it, it's finally on Spotify. It was on my very short list of records when I went to Japan. I've only been to Japan once, and I had enough time to go record shopping for real. Like one of the only records that I really wanted a physical copy of, just because I've never played it, but I found one. Someday I want to talk about record shopping in Japan sometime. But anyway, I found a copy in Japan, and I brought it home. It's like one of my, if there was a fire and I had to run out the door, it would be in the satchel of records that come with me. There's not a lot I can add to make. I think you either listen to John Coltrane and if it hits you, like, I think it doesn't take long to understand why everybody is just, why he is jaw dropping in everything he really undertook. This album for me sort of represents sort of the last look at, he couldn't get that original band to come with him, and he went on without them. But I think when you go back, you realize how much that band really put into this, and how out there it was in some respects for them. So anyway, please listen to First Meditations by the John Coltrane Quartet. It's a human achievement. Like, we're forced to read lots of books in school, but we're never forced to listen to albums when we go to school. Like this or a Love Supreme, people should be forced to listen to, in my opinion, or taught. I don't think it's going to be possible. Like, all future understanding of Western civilization, I think, is probably going to involve John Coltrane at some level. I believe John Coltrane helped bring down the Berlin Wall. I think people who didn't have access to John Coltrane knew that they were missing something, and I think not on its own, but it's just part of it. Like, I think John Coltrane is that important on that level historically, and I think Compassion from this album, I don't know why not everybody else loves it like that, but that one dude on Amazon and I were down for it all the way, and I have to share it here.
Okay. Okay, so that was your number 11.
Yeah, I can go. I have some extra built in that I can edit, so I'll go as long as you go.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm gonna try to go to 16 and sort of breeze through it a little bit because.
Got it.
Okay, so my next one is coming out of the amps. Was just a song that just has a very simple song and just sounds good and very infectious and melodic, and that is Into Your Arms by the Lemonheads. It was actually originally a song by an Australian duo called Love Positions, which was Robin St. Clair, who wrote the song, and Nick Dalton, who later on went on to be the bass player for the Lemonheads. And it was covered on "Come On Feel the Lemonheads," which was, I think, 1993. And just a just like a perfect fit to me, coming out of the Amps Pacer, and a song that is not very weighty at all, just very, very light, very just very catchy, and hard not to feel good hearing it.
Yeah, I saw this on your list and I was jealous because you're right. Boy, is there anybody who underachieved more than Evan Dando? Sorry, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but like those first couple Lemonhead records, the ones on Tang record, those are not as easy on the ears. But then he has this little period where he has this couple records in a row where he shows himself capable of like literally writing near perfect pop songs.
Well, okay, so yeah, I think you might be right as far as underachieving goes, but then again, when you look back at it, how many people have accomplished even something as great of an album as It's a Shame About Ray is? I think, to me, that's one of the I feel like that's a top 10 album of the 90s, really.
Yeah.
That's an accomplishment. And I think you're right, because I don't think Evan Dando, if he would have partied less, I'll just say that, I don't know the details of all his drug consumption, but from what I do know, I think it was pretty heavy duty. And if there would have been maybe less of that, then he could have had a, great longevity and maybe done more of what he did on It's a Shame About Ray. But then again, there aren't many bands or artists that accomplished what he did do. So yeah, I would be inclined to agree with you, but at the same time, what he did accomplish is considerable as well.
Yeah, he was addicted to alt pussy is what he was addicted to. But what are you going to say? I've gone back a few times. Remember, he had Juliana Hatfield in his band for a while. Juliana Hatfield was in the Lemonheads during that period.
Yeah.
God, I never got to see them. That had to be a pretty good band.
Yeah, well, and she's on It's a Shame About Ray.
Is she?
Yep.
She plays bass though, doesn't she?
Well, and sings. On My Drug Buddy.
Yeah.
Her vocals, are a big part of that song. Big part of what makes that work.
Yeah. When I made my Boston playlist, you kind of got to load up on Blake Babies and Juliana Hatfield. You really do need both. They played a reunion show in Nashville like a couple months ago.
The Blake Babies?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Juliana Hatfield's still doing it. She's still doing great things.
I love that Police cover record she made. Actually, the Olivia Newton-John record too is great. People don't remember how massive Olivia Newton-John was. She's got such good taste in music, and I don't think Olivia Newton-John is all that bad, but like she's another one of these people. She reminds me of Cat Power and how much great music she's always cited. She's underrated, Juliana Hatfield.
All
right, I'm down.
She had an album with Paul Westerberg, I should mention.
Yeah, and she does a great cover of "I Walk a Thin Line." I think it's on a Blake Babies reunion record too. She's great. All right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try to lighten up a little bit. I think the Ramsey Lewis trio album that is called Live at the Bohemian Caverns sounds like the happiest place in the history of the world. And it is something which my parents used to play a ton when I was a kid. When I was young, we lived in Chicago. I believe Ramsey Lewis was on Chess Records for a good chunk of it. He was always a very important part of Chicago and music in Chicago. And I just remember my parents playing like Wade in the Water, and this album Ramsey Lewis Trio at the Bohemian Caverns. And it sounds, and I don't know if this was done in the studio or how exactly it was done, but it literally sounds like they put the camera the microphone in the middle of like the crowd in like a dinner theater, where so like people are seated at tables and this is just the band in the corner, and they decided to mic the crowd super loud, so just it's like a sing-along. The whole thing is a sing-along. And I know he's done these in other places. I think Hang On Sloopy, he had a big hit with one of these like sounds live, but it's just this big sing-along of him like covering current songs. I really, really just that era of Ramsey Lewis, like it just sounds like the happiest place in the world. And the best example of it is his cover of The In Crowd, which is from the Bohemian Caverns show, but I think it was on the Greatest Hits. I don't know if it was on the full Bohemian Caverns album, but Ramsey Lewis Trio, The In Crowd, is like the happiest sounding place in the world. Like if you told me like I want to go to that place every time I listen to it, and my interest in being in that room at that time and just soaking that in has never waned. Please give it a try. I'll put In Crowd on there. If you dig it, dig up the full album. So Ramsey Lewis Trio, The In Crowd.
All right. My next one, I wanted to stay very much with the jangly sound, and of course, I'm going to have something Big Star as you did, and so with Big Star, even though they are power pop at its core, a lot of the songs have a lot of weight to them, even though they might sound very catchy and but like I don't know. Anyway, a lot of songs, even though you might think Big Star is like the perfect band for this sort of list, a lot of Big Star songs would not be good fits because they are a bit darker, bit more moody if you really get down to what they're about. But then there are the songs, Alex Chilton also was great at writing love songs that were very pure, and I think probably the best example of that is September Girls from Radio City, and just a great sounding song. I mean, the suspended chords at the beginning of this song are as life affirming as any sound from any musical instrument ever. It's just one of the best sounding songs ever, I think.
Yeah. He's a master. That's just the songcraft, the performance. It's just top notch all the way across. I was a kid when that music was out. Like I was probably like 2 years old. I heard that from the Bangles first. And it's always made me feel the Bangles had more to them. And so I'm glad I've also, like, I'm not saying thanks Alex Chilton for helping me find the Bangles, but like they were better than people give them credit for. And I thought their cover was pretty good too. That song it's the song and the performance.
Yeah. That's great.
No Bangles love? You have no Bangles love?
Well, I like the Bangles, but we're kind of up against it time wise. We can talk about the Bangles at a later date.
All right, I'll go.
It's a fine cover. It's hard to come close to what the original is, I think, though.
Got it. Up next for me is a song I don't really know much about by an artist I don't really know much about. But when I mentioned earlier, I moved to New York in like the mid-late 90s. And back then, Canal Street sold lots of, like, everybody knows about the fake Rolexes and the fake Kate Spade bags and the bootleg movies. But mix CDs were really, really one of their biggest sellers there. And during that era, the late 90s, early aughts, there was so much good Caribbean music. That was when WLIB was still on the air. They played soca and dance hall and all sorts of stuff from around the whole Caribbean. And I think I first heard this song there. But if it wasn't from there, from WLIB, it's from me going to Canal Street and trying to buy reggae and soca discs to hear the songs that I was hearing on WLIB before it tried to be the liberal talk station. Drupati's song, Mr. Bisasar, is the most happy, joyful thing I've ever heard. Drupati herself, I've listened to a few of her other songs. Her going "wee" is like her thing. She says "wee" in all of her songs, and it's great. And I'm doing it sort of flat, but when she does it, it's real, and she means it, and you mean it too when you sing along with it. I think the song "Mr. Bisasar" is about a guy playing in. So she's from the Caribbean somewhere, maybe Guyana. I'm not sure, but it's one of these countries in the Caribbean that also has a large population from the Indian diaspora. And so the music she makes, Spotify calls it chutney. I really hate those sorts of things. So I'll just say it's like part soca, and then it seems to have elements of contemporary Indian music too. And this song is just about a guy playing drums who loves playing drums, and he's in the zone, and he's in his flow state, and he loves playing the drums so much that it's like everybody around loves him loving it. It's like the most pure loving thing in the world about like the ecstasy of music that I can think of. So Mr. Bisasar by Drupati, I'll put it on the playlist. Give it a try.
All right. Okay, so this is song number 13 for me. And I've talked a lot during this list about, how music is the thing that gives me the feeling that a lot of people turn to drugs and alcohol or whatever for whatever vice for that kind of feeling. And a song to me that always did such a great job of explaining that, better than any that I can think of is Rock and Roll by the Velvet Underground.
This makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, the line in the song is her life was saved by rock and roll. Despite all the computations, you can just change it to the rock and roll station and it's all right. And that's perfect. That's what we need right now is just finding that release, that finding that rescue, from rock and roll.
Yep. The only other song I can think of that's up there at that is 13 by Big Star. That pure love of rock and roll. But it's about more than that, obviously. So no arguments here.
Yeah, and it's also just kind of the thing. I don't know that it ever worked out for me, maybe the way it worked out for the protagonist in the song, but that is kind of the epitome of it. There's nothing happening at all, nothing going down at all in rock and roll.
Yeah. Wow, coming from Lou too, because he was such a counterculture person by then, surely. And for him to still cop to that love of rock and roll, though, it's nice. Makes me feel less bad about it too.
Yeah, well, it's a pure thing. It doesn't matter. You can be the most cynical person in the world, but you feel that.
All right. Well, I'm going to transition here. This is the last one that I might need a little time with. Everything else I can speed round, but this one, if I take up time, it's because I'm interested in maybe this is you and I discussing it. I have always thought of Brian Wilson's work as being like one of the most pure expressions of happiness and pure expressions of joy. And that's a thing I've always associated with them. I will say the more I learn about his biography, the less it's complicated as to, how aspirational the happiness is.
Yeah, I have to crosstalk you a little bit on that because please. Actually, that is something I've listened to the Beach Boys literally my whole life, literally from the womb on. And so kind of like the Big Star thing, where on the surface it sounds very happy, very pleasant. The Beach Boys thing, to me, there's always that melancholy, at least to the Brian Wilson stuff, that I picked up on very early. Like, I can remember hearing, in my room when I was a kid, and just thinking about how sad that song was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do think of Brian Wilson's expressions of joy as what's amazing is there are just times in my life where I have felt them in a way that was reminiscent of what I think he was trying to do. And I know this is corny as hell, but like moving to California and just the beauty of it. It's overwhelming, that experience. And again, this is super corny, but they sang about California in the sense that that everybody would understand. But when you're there, like you sort of realize that they sang about California like in a at a level of detail that could only be consistent with love. And if you also love that place and love being there, there is something different. There's just something overwhelming and really, I just can't think of too many records that empty the pleasure chemicals for me faster than Our Prayer and Good Vibrations. I put them together. I do think they're the two best things in the Beach Boys catalog, although there's stuff right behind it. There's a ton of stuff right up there, but I mean, Our Prayer for me is like spiritual. I realize I'm just hitting it on the nose there and I'm just a cliche and whatever, but I can't think of too many things that have been written in the modern era that are more beautiful than Our Prayer, and I can't think of a more pure expression of joy put into the pop format than Good Vibrations. So I'm going to do two Brian Wilsons for one here, and I'm just going to put those are, if I did have to rank them, I'd probably have to be talked out of these as number one for something else, because this is probably for me like the most pure distillation of the idea of just your brain, just the dopamine from music. Like not too much does it for me like those two songs.
Yeah, I agree with the choices, but yeah, there's like a melancholy. I think they're tinged with melancholy, even though they give you the good feeling as well. Like In My Room does.
Yeah,
because they're beautiful songs, but they're also, like the intro to Good Vibrations is also kind of dark. Because of the minor chords. There's a lot of complexity to the Beach Boys, which is interesting because that's definitely not consistent with their reception by the masses, I would say. But
no, you're right. Brian Wilson, though, he was tangled up in blue in maybe a little different sense than Dylan meant it in the song, but like everything with him was always had that duality to it, and it just makes it stick. It just makes it, it hurts a little bit. It's so emotionally on the nose. But anyway, I've had my time. I rest, Your Honor.
Yeah, Beach Boys didn't make my list, but certainly they would be. I mean, there's so much, and maybe we'll have a little time at the end to talk about what things didn't make the list. But the Beach Boys, a lot of things that would have been my first go-to: the Ramones, the Beach Boys, Cheap Trick. These are bands that actually did not make my list, surprisingly, because they're certainly the first bands that I think of for this sort of thing, but just didn't make it, and would make the next installment if there's a need to do another installment. The next one up,
I hope so. I would like to think it will get better on its own, but if not, it's not bad.
Yeah, we're ready to go in case it does, but let's hope that things turn around. And staying with that theme, Better Things by the Kinks is my number 14 song. Wishing you the bluest skies and hoping something better comes tomorrow. You couldn't really say it any clearer than that, any more fitting than that. Ray Davies, one of my favorite all-time songwriters, and a song where obviously about consoling somebody, and that's what we're trying to do here, more to ourselves than anyone else, I think. And just a song that that is an easy one for me to go to when I'm down.
I might have Days was close for me on this one. I think Days is one of the more life-affirming, wonderful songs I've ever heard, and I like it in many versions. So I would almost like to do a show about the song Days by the Kinks. I think it's significant enough, but can't argue with your choice either.
Well, we should definitely do a Kinks show.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, I'll go through my speed round here, and I'll just throw a quick confection in. I worked as a disc jockey at an oldie station. That forced a lot of songs through my ears that I never would have heard otherwise. By the time we changed format to classic rock, I normally would start the song and turn the volume down for all but about maybe like 30 or 40 of the songs. The rest of them, even the ones I loved, I was so burned out on. But one that I never turned down and loved, and even though half the song is not anything spectacular, the opening riff and the singing and just the period piece that it is, I'm picking Reach Out of the Darkness by Friend and Lover, which you have to listen to the whole song like 60 seconds in for them to sing Reach Out of the Darkness. And I'm guessing most people don't make it that far before they hit rewind just to hear the beginning where the girl sings, I think it's so groovy now. Like, it's that little riff of I think it's so groovy now, sung by that woman. I don't know if she's friend or lover, but that first like 15, 20 seconds of that song it's like instantly into my brain. There's nothing really that delivers quite like the first 20 some seconds of Reach Out of the Darkness by Friends and Lover. Give it a rip.
All right. Okay. My number 15, another one of my favorite all-time songs. As much as I love Stevie Wonder's catalog, at least the 60s and the 70s anyway, I don't know that there's a song that I love more than Signed, Sealed, and Delivered. And it just perfect for this type of list. Like the way that song makes me feel with the way the band's playing, the performance is just as good as anything I've ever heard captured in a studio. I think the confines of the studio don't often yield the perfect results, but here's a case where the results are perfect. And it also happens to be the first single that Stevie Wonder ever produced, or self-produced. I don't know if he produced anything for someone else prior to this, but it's the first thing he ever produced for himself. And it's just, how can you do any better than that?
I don't know. He was such a genius. People don't really talk about him as much as he deserves, because he built his own keyboards, man. Like, how many artists can build their own cutting edge like instruments? Most of it's like novelty shit. This guy did it for a decade and just he blew minds for a living. He was just and you're right, that this record sounds beautiful. The production of it. That's one of the best produced records ever.
Yeah, and it's just one of the greatest performances ever done by a studio band. It's just perfect. One of my favorite bass lines. We talked about it not too long ago. About the bass line that I love so much, and yeah, it's just perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah. Not many artists in the history of the world are going to have as great a run as Stevie Wonder did. Just that peak period. He had 10 years of he just literally was producing just killer after killer. Almost no one can do that. That's great stuff. Up next for me, I'm going to go for something real hacky and cliched, so I'll keep it short. All Together Now by The Farm. I don't think I don't know if the estate of Pachelbel, whoever wrote Pachelbel's canon, whatever, I don't know if they're around, if they can sue The Farm for basically co-opting it, but I don't know a lot about classical music. I think that's one of the pieces of classical music everybody knows. Nothing that's just like you can have all the feels for that when you hear the classical version. But then when the farm puts that delicious little guitar riff on top of it and then sings one of the most like best heartwarming things ever about during World War I at the first Christmas when the troops came out of the trenches and refused to fight and played soccer instead. And they basically had to be forced at bayonet to stop fighting or stop playing with each other and go back to fighting. And that the military brass was scandalized that the troops would fraternize on Christmas, and the Farms Altogether Now is about that. It's an incredibly uplifting story. The music's beautiful and yet tethered to the 80s and 90s, which at the time I really appreciated. So the Farm Altogether Now.
Wait, I don't know if I heard this right. Did you say you don't know who wrote Pachelbel's canon?
No, I was being facetious.
Okay. I didn't pick up on it.
No, I was being facetious.
Okay, gotcha.
But boy, if you got to explain it, that's a hint not to try that again. So
Yeah.
point taken.
I don't know who wrote Beethoven's Fifth, but
do you know who wrote a fifth of Beethoven? See, just trying to help.
I know who co-wrote it. I assume Beethoven gets a writing credit on that one as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll look it up. You're up.
If not, something's terribly wrong, or I guess it's public domain, so maybe it didn't matter.
It would be hard for you to do a disco show, wouldn't it? You're not as into disco, I think, as I am.
Yeah, it's not something that like I'm not one of those people that is just totally against disco. There's some disco that I like, and probably a lot that I don't. Probably more than I'd say definitely there's more disco I don't like than do like, but there is some disco I like. It's basically like other very popular forms of music that that I don't like a lot of. When hip hop became more commercial, then there was a lot less of it that I liked, and it's not simply because of the success, but just a matter of a lot of things have to become less complex in order to be popular, otherwise they're not going to get a wide reception.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it works with disco, is a lot of the things with disco that were very popular were popular because of the repetition, and it's simple, it's easy to grasp, and not as interesting to me, not as enjoyable to me.
All right, I might try to persuade you otherwise. We got to talk about Chic at some point.
Well, it's not like I'm not exposed to that. Chic is fine. Chic is fine. I don't really dislike Chic. I don't. It's not but it's not something I dislike.
All righty. There's a lot there to unpack. You're up.
Okay, well, so my 16 and 17 songs are a case where I'm double dipping, so I'm gonna do both of those together. Do you have any more on your list?
I can, but I think I went first. So if this is the last of it, then this would be the end. But I could do two more if I had to.
Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna do my 16 and 17 together since they're both by the Beatles. If there's a band worth double dipping for, of course it's the Beatles, and I'm not going to worry about that. So both of these are songs, that are very much about offering consolation to someone, and it's right there in the opening lyrics. And the first one of those is "Hey Jude" by Paul McCartney, who wrote the song to console Julian Lennon, John's son. I believe because that was maybe when John and Cynthia were getting divorced. I'm not sure if I remember that right anymore. But anyway, You know, a great song and a song that fits the list, obviously, because it is intended to be a song to cheer someone up, but also has that, sing along aspect to it that is just one of the all-time uplifting sort of sing-alongs.
And
And
the world, everyone in the world sings along to it. Like it's
right, you can't. Yeah, it's a sing-along that you can't pass up on.
right.
And so, originally that was going to be my end to it. That was going to be, the ultimate send-off, and it could have been. But I also, felt like "Here Comes the Sun" by George also had its place on my list. And it also kind of had, to me, it sort of works on the same level that, so for some people, I guess this doesn't really work, but the way the Abbey Road medley, doesn't end with the end. It ends with Her Majesty, right? And in this case, Hey Jude is the end, but Here Comes the Sun is Her Majesty. And so I felt like Here Comes the Sun was actually like the way to end it off, because you've hit the peak, you've hit the logical end with the great send off, but then Here Comes the Sun is like the real end. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And yeah, no, Here Comes the Sun is just perfect, I think, too, because it's really about getting through the winter, and metaphorically, that can represent the tough times. Just getting through this. We're going to get through this.
Renewal.
The sun,
it's really heavy on renewal. It really it's the reason it's a perfect way to end is because it's literally a new day. Like literally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll get there. We are going to get there. I mean, a lot of people probably think that we're overreacting to things right now, and maybe we are, and if we are, I think that that's the way to do it. I think sometimes you have to overreact. I think it's better to overreact than to underreact, but we will get through it, and the sun will come.
That works on many levels. It works for me. I think it works as a way to wind down, and I believe it also sets us up for our next topic, if I'm not mistaken.
It does. It does. We will, as we had planned this week, we will be drafting Beatles solo material.
Yeah, that's a good one.
In our second fantasy draft. So we started out with banality drafts, and then we got to fantasy draft with Fleetwood Mac. And our second fantasy draft will be the Beatles solo.
In our double fantasy? I'm here all.
Yes, our double fantasy draft.
Woohoo! All right. I can't wait. We'll see you then.
All right, we'll see you next week.